What?
Oh, it's on for me.
Oh.
So what are you seeing right now?
I can see you.
Okay.
You're
And can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, back to normal.
Sorry, folks.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. So hello, Humber students, and thank you for joining us at Humber's reorientation. We know having classes fully online may be different for you, but online reorientation was created to help you with helpful tips, information, and also to better connect you with each other online. My name is Nikki, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm an orientation senior leader, and I just finished my second year in a bachelor's of HR. I'm also your host for Reorientation Week, so you might be seeing me a little bit. This is our mature student session, and the intent is to showcase how Humber supports our mature students, so you can ask your questions here. Please note that we are meeting in a virtual space and we want to ensure that everyone is respectful. So please just be mindful of that. If you join, keep your mic muted. Helping me share this info today and answer your questions are some people I would like to welcome. I have Liz from the Student Wellness and Accessibility Center.
Hello, everybody.
And I also have Allison.
Hi.
I will now pass it off to you. I will take off my camera and mic. Enjoy the session.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. So I'm going to introduce myself a little more than hello there. I'm Liz Sokol, and I'm one of the counselors at the North Campus in our counseling center. And I am mature. I'm not a student at the moment, but I am mature. And I've been doing the mature student orientation activities for a number of years because it's something that I feel fairly passionate about. I think it can be fairly helpful. So I do hope that you enjoy what we are about to present to you. And before we move on to that, I'm going to let my co-presenter, Allie, introduce herself.
Thank you, Liz. So I'm Allison Scully, or you can call me Allie. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I come from the Advising and Career Services Department, and we support you in various ways, like navigating the Humber experience. I also was a mature student. I went back to school after 13 years and balanced being a full-time employee and a full-time student. So I am a fellow mature student.
Great, thank you. So I may turn to you. We may need to pick your brain a little as a mature student. Okay, so the reason we hold this session for mature students specifically is because we know mature students have unique circumstances. They are coming back to school because they either want to learn new skills, perhaps upgrade their skills, or maybe switch careers altogether. Because mature students have generally been out of school for some number of years, they come with unique strengths, abilities, and knowledge, but also unique challenges. For most mature students, coming back to school is a pretty big deal. We know that you didn't come here on a whim, that you had to make significant decisions about your life, probably making many changes, many sacrifices, and that it is a big decision. So that's what we're doing here today, and I'm just going to jump right on in. Okay, so right now we've just started week 3 of the semester. So what's really helpful to do is really early on in the semester is just sort of do a little bit of reflection around where am I right now? And, you know, most of us have a fairly easy time sort of thinking about, well, this didn't go well, or I messed that up, or I don't like this. That's the easy part. But we often forget to sort of know, well, what has gone really well for us? What have I been pleasantly surprised about? What was a good experience? What am I enjoying, right? So just sort of, and then also what has been challenging and what has maybe, you know, raised some concerns of mine. And the reason this and the next point, which is You know, what am I confused about? Is there something I don't understand? Is there something I don't know? Am I missing information? Those last 2 points are important simply because you want to get on it. You don't want to leave things hanging. So if there are issues that are coming up, what you want to do is deal with them as soon as you possibly can. And there are about 1,000,001 places for you to get assistance and help at Humber. We're going to talk about some of them today, but help is there. You just have to reach out and ask for it. So who exactly are these mature students? Well, first of all, you may be surprised to learn that in any given semester or year, we have 20 to 30% of our student body comprising people who are 25 years and older. Mature students are as diverse as every other student, diverse in terms of gender, age, culture, ethnicity, language, educational background, life circumstances, life experiences. To be a mature student, generally, you have to be 25 years or older. That's the criteria. There are other criteria as well. And we've had students up into their 70s, which is pretty amazing. Mature students are known to be very determined and self-directed. Both of those things are very good things to be as a post-secondary student, and responsible. And it doesn't, what that refers to is mature students tend to take responsibility for themselves. They recognize that, you know, they have choice and can be successful and will take responsibility for being successful. They are focused on their success, clear about their goals, and tend to be quite result oriented. They often have external life circumstances that involve their time and energy as well. So it may be family, it may be community, it may be children, partners, aging parents. There may be a lot of other things going on in a mature student's life. And because of that, they tend to be very focused on their success and know why they're here and what they want to do. And they're far less likely than perhaps younger students, say, to spend, you know, hours every day playing video games, for example, unless, of course, they're in the video or the game programming program. Mature students can also be very hard on themselves. They may have very high, sometimes maybe a little unrealistic expectations of themselves, believing that they should, you know, walk in, they should be able to do it all and do it perfectly from day one, and are often the first to criticize themselves for their perceived shortcomings or making mistakes. Additionally, if you've been out of school for a while, you may not be sure of your skills. You haven't used them for a while, or you may not have certain skills. So it's quite reasonable to feel like, oh, I don't know, because you may not know. The good news is that skills are skills, meaning you can learn them like any other skill. And there is a plethora of available help, tutorials, workshops, one-on-one support, et cetera, for acquiring new skills. So if you're feeling, oh, I'm not really sure, I don't have confidence in certain skills, that's okay. That's normal, and you can certainly develop those skills. The sort of hidden secret about mature students is because they've had life experience doing different things and you know, maybe a little older, they have actually, I'm going to say we, because you're here as a mature student, I'm here as a mature person, and Allie is here as a semi-mature person. No, I'm kidding, she's younger, but also has been a mature student. So we have skills we've developed through life experience, through, you know, raising our families, through previous jobs. When we come into school, we may temporarily lose those skills, but they are still there. And oftentimes people just take certain things for granted. Well, of course I can organize myself. I mean, who can't? Well, lots of people can't. But as a mature student, you may just think, well, everybody does this and I do it, and it's not a big deal. But give yourself time. Be patient with yourself so that, you know, as you move forward, you can learn about, oh yes, I do have organizational skills, or oh, I am good at, you know, time management, or I'm not good at time management and therefore I need to get some help and maybe take a time management workshop. Your biggest job right now is to just give yourself a bit of time and allow yourself to make the transition into this new role of being a learner. The first semester is in some ways the hardest because everything's new, and it's going to take you a while to settle into a routine, to find your groove, what works for you, what doesn't. So just try to be patient with yourself. Okay. The good news is there's a lot of research on mature students. And again, you know, as I mentioned, students may feel not so sure about their skills when they first arrive at the college. And the first time they're confronted with, oh, how do I study for an exam, or write an exam, or write an essay, or make notes, or use the technology. Gosh, right now that's the issue, isn't it, for all of us? Steep learning curves. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. Steep learning curves related to the technology. But again, if you're patient with yourself and there's lots of help available, you can learn how to learn and be comfortable with the technology. Once students settle in, they tend to do quite well. I often hear new mature students saying things like, I didn't do well in school, I may not have finished school, I'm not school smart. And they may feel particularly not very confident. More often than not, once people settle in, they actually do very well. And they recognize or perhaps discover that in fact they are school smart and they do well in school. It may well be that when in school at an earlier time, there may have been, you know, life circumstances, there may have been boredom with school, there may have been disinterest, or maybe, you know, just lack of emotional maturity at 16 years old, right? So mature students actually, research shows mature students actually tend to achieve higher GPAs by the time they graduate than perhaps some of their younger counterparts. And I want to read you this quote, which I found and I really like, from a research study. And it says, older students, rather than their younger counterparts, display those learning characteristics which traditionally higher education has purported to be striving to develop in students. In other words, mature students either come with or quickly develop the very skills that colleges and universities are trying to teach students. So that's extremely good news, obviously. Sorry again, I keep dropping things. And when you do research on mature students, so for instance, I went onto our library and I did a search on mature students and academic performance, which you too will be able to do very soon if you wish, because there is a handout, and on that handout there's information about the library and also a very good little short video on how to use the library. So when I did this search, the first 5 studies that I found said that mature students do very well academically and tend to score generally higher than younger students. After reading the same thing in 5 different studies, I stopped because I thought, I know that's true. I don't need any more studies. So again, it may take you a while to settle in, and that's normal. It's normal to be anxious. It's normal to have concerns. It's normal to feel really uncomfortable in the beginning. It's a big transition. But eventually, through experience, time, and practice, most people do settle and then go on to do really, really well. This is just an example of the areas that we see, and the research shows the mature students tend to have concerns in. So, of course, there are concerns outside of these three areas, but we're focusing today on the balancing act, so balancing school and everything else. Making the transition into the role of the student. So all the academic skills, all the, developing comfort with how to do things, where to get help, that sort of thing. But also, whatever you're doing in your life aside from being a student, whether it's, I have a partner, I have a part-time job, I have children, I have aging parents, being a student will undoubtedly shift those roles as well. You'll still have them, but how you are in those roles is very likely to change as a result of becoming a student. And it is a time of transition not only for you, but anybody around you who perhaps shares your household or who is involved with you on a regular basis. Making the trend, or sorry, the third bubble is rusty learning skills. And again, I hear a lot from new mature students coming in about how they may be concerned about their ability to, like I previously mentioned, write an essay, study, everything, use the technology, all that kind of thing. And the one thing that I often hear is about, I'm worried my brain is old, or I have a slower brain, or my memory isn't as good as it once was. And there may be some truth in those statements. As we grow older, our brains change, and our brains are different than they were when we were 20. But I didn't say poorer, I said different. So for you, this may be sort of a getting to know your brain again sort of experience where you learn how your brain works. Doing well in school is not about who can do things the fastest, and it's not about who is the smartest. Research shows, a lot of the research shows, one of the main issues around student success is commitment. So when people are committed and prioritize their studies, they tend to do very well, no matter how old their brain is or how, quote unquote, poor their memory is. So that's something really good to know. Also, I often hear mature students express concerns around, I'm not going to be able to keep up. Well, as long as you can keep up with your work, which again is not a matter of how fast your brain is, it may be a matter of organization. It may be a matter of prioritization. And once people sort of get the hang, and it takes a while to get the hang of what works for you and how are you going to be your best sort of learner. Once that happens, people settle in and those concerns absolutely evaporate. And in fact, many mature students end up being either in their classes or in their groups of peers, leaders, because they do have excellent skills and they do have life experience and they are smart. If you weren't smart, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have gotten into the college. So try to relax a bit and not worry too much about the study skills. And we're going to talk about each of these areas in turn in a little more detail. Okay, so first of all, the learning skills. There's a handout which will be posted and you will have access to. What I've just done is highlighted on this slide some of the available supports. So we have peer tutors, for example. You can get tutoring for 3 hours a week for free. So if you're stuck, if you're not understanding something, no problem. We have learning skills workshops. They're not only recorded, but also will be available remotely and live at times. There's a huge tips for success page, including a section on being a mature student. The Ontario College's learning skills collection is huge, absolutely huge. It's a compilation of all the colleges, and it has some really good sections on being a mature student, on online learning, as well as, I think it's in that section, they talk about how to be a student when you have children at home who may or may not be students as well. We have the access point to look at the important dates of the semester. So for example, we just, I believe, passed the date to withdraw without academic, or no, withdraw, sorry, I'm trying to talk too fast. I'm getting all mixed up. The date to withdraw to get a refund. That's what I was trying to say. There's information on the writing, math, and accounting centers. So if you're in any of those courses, you can go and get help there. There's a library guide. There's how-to guides. So things about how do I use Blackboard? How do I pay for parking? How do I look at my transcript? How do I drop a course? How do I add it? All that sort of thing. A whole section of online learning tips, which is, the good news is, coming in as a mature student, you're thinking, oh, I'm new, everybody else knows what they're doing, but this online learning thing is new for everybody right now. So you're in the same boat as everyone else as far as that goes. And again, you can check out that site to learn more about things you can do to help yourself be a better online learner. There's another section on transitioning into the student role. And then there's a whole list of all the student services we offer, which I'm not going to go into because they are on the handout, they're on the website, and I think I have a slide coming up. So the long and short of it is that there's almost every kind of help that you could ever possibly need available. You do have to reach out and ask for it. No one's going to sort of intuit that you're needing help when you're needing help. But as long as you reach out and ask for it, it's there. And by the way, another thing that the research shows around student success is students who recognize that they need help and then ask for the help tend to be among the most successful students. So that's just another little tip. Okay, so when it comes to learning skills and study skills, I just want to point something out that often happens to mature students. Depending on what you were doing before you came back to school, whatever your role was, you were probably pretty comfortable in it and competent in it, and may well have been the person that other people could go to get answers or to consult with. When you come into school as a student, you're no longer in that role. The definition of a student, in a way, is someone who doesn't know, who is here to acquire that knowledge, who has the questions but perhaps not the answers, and who, in a sense, isn't competent. And what I mean by that is you don't know everything. Of course not. If you did, you'd be teaching the course. So that can feel very uncomfortable and awkward. And sometimes people think, I'm not doing very well, because they are so used to feeling competent and knowing what they're doing that if they don't know exactly what they're doing and they're in the learning position, it somehow feels like wrong or bad. But it's just, again, be patient, just accept it. And most people eventually come to really enjoy the opportunity that coming back to school affords to really learn a lot of very interesting things. So be aware of that and watch for that. Okay. I'm going to, I think I'm going to talk about it here. One of the things I always talk about when I do this session is self-criticism. And mature students, all students, probably all people, we can be very, very hard on ourselves. And oftentimes when we're in a situation where we're maybe a little sort of tentative, we're not sure yet how this is all going to work, we become even more critical. So, if we don't get something right away, it's like, oh, what's the matter with me? My brain isn't working. This isn't going to work. Or, we ask a question that maybe we feel in retrospect is very obvious. And I've often talked about the example of, being in a workshop and being really interested and enthusiastic, and a question pops into my head. So I asked it. As soon as I asked the question, I realized, I actually know the answer. And furthermore, the presenter had talked about that very issue about 5 minutes previous. So then what happened is in my head, I'm starting to go, way to go, Liz. That was dumb. Why did you, criticize, right? And many people also think or believe that they will motivate themselves by being hard on themselves. Like, I need to do this, I need to do it now, and I need to do it well. In fact, that is the absolute wrong approach to take. And we do not learn well when we are feeling bad. And when we criticize ourselves or when we're hard on ourselves, we end up just feeling really bad. And that's the worst conditions to try to learn under. In fact, when we do learn well is when we're feeling good, when we're feeling generous with ourselves or competent. So I hear self-criticism over and over and over again. And since, I can't be in your head, I can barely be in my own head a lot of the time, but I want you to be particularly aware. And when you catch yourself beating yourself up or criticizing yourself because you don't know something, or you should know something, or you didn't do it perfectly, stop and remind yourself, this is not helpful. The only thing I am accomplishing at this point is creating distress and the conditions that are going to make it harder for me to learn. So cut it out. Okay, onwards and upwards. The role of the learner. So this is definitely a time of transition, and you will not know everything. You may not know much of anything in the very beginning. And again, like I've said, this could feel very awkward, very uncomfortable for you. So just recognize that making mistakes is good. And as a matter of fact, making mistakes is pretty much necessary. So an example of making mistakes is, when we learn to walk, we didn't sort of decide at whatever age we do that, we're going to learn to walk. We stood up, we hung on to things, we wobbled, we fell. We stood up again, we took another step, we fell. We stood up again, maybe we took 2 steps, we fell. We fell, we fell, we fell, over and over and over again. That's how we learn to walk, right? That's true of almost learning any new skill. That's how you're going to learn new skills here as well. You're going to try it out and it may not work, or you may not do it well, and you're going to try again, and you may do it a little better the second time around, and then the third time around a little better still, etc., etc. You may find that in fact, some things don't work at all for you. And, some people, for example, can only study when there's music going in the background. Other people find if there's, even a pin dropping, they're distracted. So you're going to figure out what works for you, but it's going to take some trial and error. Okay. So again, I say give yourself a whole semester to figure it out. This is an experiment. Everything you do in the first semester, you are doing for the first time. So not only are you trying to master the content that's being delivered in your program, but you're also trying to figure out, who am I as a learner? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? What skills do I already have? What skills do I need to acquire? So it's a steep learning curve that first semester. So just be patient and recognize it is going to take time. Asking questions. A lot of people will feel self-conscious asking a question. I encourage you to ask as many questions as you have questions. And I also encourage you, haven't already started to ask questions in class, do so, even when you don't genuinely have a question. The reason for doing this is it starts to increase your comfort at speaking out in a class, whether it be an online class, an in-person class, which you will have one day eventually. But also it helps the teacher get to know you and you get to know the teacher, which again increases your comfort level should you need to go to them to ask for clarification or assistance. So asking questions is definitely a good thing. And I do find mature students are actually better at asking questions. You know, they tend to be much more aware of, I'm here because I want to be successful, I'm paying for this, and I'm going to get my money's worth. So ask those questions. Don't wait too long if you're stuck or don't understand something. You know, oftentimes people will say, okay, well, I didn't get it now, but maybe next class I'll get it. But if the next class builds on this class and the next class builds on that class, you know, 3 weeks in and you're hopelessly behind and lost. So it's a good practice to get assistance as soon as you can. And that can be simply checking with your professor. It can be something more formal like applying for peer tutoring. It can be talking to a classmate, right? There's different ways to get help, but do ask for it. And I know I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again, be really patient with yourself. It's not going to do you any good to get frustrated and critical and down on yourself. It'll just get in your way. Okay, the balancing act. So when we talk about this, we're talking about balancing school with family, children, parents, community, work, social life, spiritual life, etc., etc., etc. And it is one of the biggest challenges in being a student is how do you balance everything? Well, first of all, you don't. You're never going to have that perfect balance where everything is nicely lined up. At times it'll be, you know, far heavier on the school side, and there may be times where it's far heavier on the life side. But overall, you want to strive for the best balance that you yourself can find that works for you, that's comfortable, and that allows you to be successful. So time management. Now, a lot of people, it's like, time management. I hate time management. I don't want to, you know, it feels constricting. I don't want to have to schedule. I don't want to, you know, have to do certain things at a certain time. But actually, if time management is done well, it can be like having a really good friend. So someone that supports you in your goals, someone that reminds you to get back on track if you get off track, someone that you can look to for guidance. And this is all because you have engaged in time management. Now, again, in the handout, there's many, many, many places you can get time management, including on through the Humber Learning Skills website. It's not the sexiest or most exciting topic in the world, but it is probably one of the most useful. It takes a bit of time and energy and effort to create a schedule for yourself or a plan for yourself that actually works. What I recommend is you know, getting a big something that's erasable, like you know, one of those big calendars or a whiteboard, because you want to put a plan or a schedule up, and then as you're going through and trying it out and recognizing there are bits that don't work well for you, erasing them and revising your plan. If you continually revise and pay attention and think about what's going to work, you should end up with something that feels pretty comfortable. It shouldn't be like a pair of shoes that's too tight, right? It should be like that comfortable pair of slippers that are well broken in and kind of warm and cozy. But like I say, it does take time, and you do have to go back and revise and revise and revise. Most people make the mistake of developing a schedule, trying it out once, it doesn't necessarily work perfectly, and abandoning the whole thing. So I do encourage, consider, you know, spending some time around your time management. The other issue around time management is once you get yourself organized and you get a plan developed, it's very helpful, because sometimes what happens is when you start thinking about all the things you have to do between now and, you know, midterms or finals or the end of the semester, it's completely overwhelming. But you don't actually need to think about everything you need to do. once you get it all planned out and you got time, you've sort of slotted things in more or less, all you have to do is think about, what am I doing today? So if you start thinking, oh my God, I have 16 different assignments due, oh no, I don't have to think about that, right? I just have to think about the 2.5 hours I allotted for X, Y, and Z today. And then that's it. And tomorrow I can just worry about what I have to do tomorrow. So it's actually a very effective way of managing stress and managing anxiety, particularly about, the overwhelm that can come around all the work that has to be done. So again, another good reason, I'm really pitching the time management here. Another suggestion is try as much as possible to consider your classes and your homework time like a full-time job. So establishing routines, so you're spending, 5 hours every Monday and 8 hours every Tuesday, and however it works for you, but be consistent. With the online classes, it's really easy to say, I'll do it later, I'll view it later. But I really encourage you, develop some really good habits in the beginning. So, every time you have a RIT class, you're going to watch it maybe Tuesday at 10 a.m. or p.m., whatever works for you, right? And every Tuesday at 10, that's your commitment. In the same way it would be if you were attending a class in person, which again, you will be someday. Use the time in between your classes to do homework, do reading, do planning. If you sort of imagine you have this full-time job of being a student and doing your homework, and that you're committing X number of hours to it every day, you'll find that you actually have a little more time for fun things. Not that studying can't be fun, but fun things like social life or Netflix, or anything else that you enjoy, getting out and going for a walk, doing fun stuff, especially in the summer. So, in your head, commit to it as you would to a full-time job. Planning in advance with your family members, if you are working part-time with your boss, is very helpful, because there will be times you're going to be less available for your children, for your partner, in your community, depending on what else you have going in your life. But letting people know what they can expect, and also letting yourself off the hook. Recognize that, during exams, you're not going to be doing a lot of socializing. You're going to be probably doing a fair bit of studying. But when you plan in advance and give everybody notice, things just run so much more smoothly, and you don't find yourself in a bind as you realize, oh my gosh, I've got a 6-hour work shift and I have to study for 4 hours and my exam is in 8 hours, whatever. The next point, be creative. I mean, be creative. There's no limit to what you can try to make things work for you personally. So there's no right way to do things. If you've got children at home, involve your children as much as possible. You can do homework with them. You can all do your homework together. You might not get a ton of homework done, but you are getting to spend time with your kids. You are getting to tutor them, or teach them, as many parents are doing these days. Pets. I had a student who was studying anatomy and physiology, and I honestly don't remember if it was a cat or a dog, but she pretended they were a person and was sort of, saying, now this is your leg, and in your leg you have, these bones and these nerves and these blood vessels, and involved their dog or their cat or whatever it was. So there's anything you can think of to try. Don't limit yourself to, I'm going to read and underline and make notes and reread. It doesn't have to be that way. You can draw pictures. You can sing. Singing is great. You can make up lyrics with the issues that you want to study. I once had a student tell me that when she was reviewing the material for an exam, she would pretend she was being interviewed by a talk show host and say, why, yes, Jimmy Kimmel, I'd be happy to tell you all about the anatomy of a cell, that kind of thing. It sounds goofy, but if it works, it works. So So don't limit yourself in terms of what you're willing to try. Um, Again, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself. Recognize, in terms of this balancing act, you cannot in a day be, for example, a full-time student, as well as a full-time parent, as well as a full-time teacher to your children, as well as a part or full-time employee. You can't do that in 24 hours, right? So all of a sudden, we're all multitasking and trying to combine all these roles that perhaps other people did, like teaching our children, right? And recognize it just isn't doable. So be kind, be patient, and understand that you're going to have limits. It's hard. It's challenging to figure this stuff out. You will figure it out. One way or another, you will figure it out. But don't expect yourself to just to walk in, do it well, do it perfectly, and do it right, and do the jobs of 4 people with 1 body. Okay, enough said on that. Okay. We have many student services, and these are not all of them. These are only some of them. But self-care is critically important. And I'm not going to go through them because you guys can all read, and you can go online and you can see what services are offered where. But actually, you remember meeting Allison or Allie way back when, before I started talking? Anyways, I'm going to ask her to come in and talk a little bit about her area and what they're doing in her area, because it's a really useful area to highlight and for you to be aware of as you head into this, your first semester here at Humber or Guelph Humber. Allie?
Perfect. Thanks, Liz. So as I mentioned, I work in advising and career services. And what we do is we support you in navigating Humber. So we help you find support, how to communicate with faculty, discuss with you any barriers that you're concerned about, and what support is available to help you. As Liz mentioned, if you don't remember how to study, we can provide you with resources, help you do an assessment to figure out, what habits are not helping you and which ones are making more of a challenge to get to your work done. So every student is assigned to a career student success advisor. I am one for the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Science. So if you wanted to email me, my email is allison.scully, ALLISON, .scully, SCULLY, @humber.ca. And I can introduce you to the Career and Student Success Advisor that is responsible for your program. And I can introduce you, and you can reach out and they can provide you the support that you may need. And that's my blurb.
Great, good blurb. Thanks. Okay, so again, I'm going to let you folks have a look. I am a counselor, so I just have to say a word about counseling, just because I can. This is my presentation. So we do have counseling services available here at Humber and Guelph Humber. We are personal counselors, also would be known out in the community as psychotherapists. We are here for you if you have personal issues, mental health issues, issues, hopefully not, but issues around, violence or sexual violence or sexual orientation or family problems, relationship issues, stress, overwhelm. The 2 biggest issues we tend to see people coming in with right now are anxiety and depression. And that's true across the board at all the colleges. It's not just at Humber. So we are a free service for you. Well, it's covered in your student fees. And we are confidential. When I say confidential, I mean there's no record. We have our own health records, but nothing goes on your student record. And we are covered under the same Privacy Act as a physician. So we are very confidential. Nobody needs to know you're coming unless you choose to tell them, and we can't share any information about you without your written or verbal consent. So I'm just going to say, you know, if you find yourself somewhere in the future hitting, you know, a few bumps in the road, or you're just not feeling great, you're not sure what's going on, you know, don't hesitate to come see a counselor. We are providing online counseling services, one-to-one online counseling services. So much like, well, not much like today where I'm blathering on and on, but you know, it's a video conference counseling appointment. And we do tend to get quite busy. We have a lot of students using the services. So that's just a little plug for counseling. I'm going to show you, this is the from our We Got You webpage, which again is just a different way of looking at some of the student services. And there's full descriptions of all the student services. Actually, if I go back a slide, I just want you to note here in the red box, this is the website right here, that any updates to the services, how they're being provided. Eventually, we will be moving back into the college. We all will, and be providing, you know, services in person again. So anything, any kind of updates around any of the services, the non-academic parts, will be posted at that website. Okay, I have talked way longer than I had planned on talking. So if you're still with me, congratulations, you made it to the end. And I'm just going to say, I'm wishing everybody a fabulous semester, and I hope to see you one day around in our halls. Ciao for now.
Thank you so much, Liz and Allison, for all of your help and information.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you for those of you that are watching our session. If you have any questions, please email orientation@humber.ca.
Great. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you too.
I'm tired of